The West Penre Papers. A Journey Through the Multiverse. The First Level of Learning. Westpenre.com. Science section. Science paper number 2, Known Life Forms Within the Milky Way and Beyond. By West Penre, Tuesday, February 25, 2011 at 11:50 a.m. 1. Material life forms in the Merkaba. In physics, interaction between the simplest particles in the universe is the fundamental way of looking at things. The atoms in our bodies obey to these fundamental interactions, but the information cloud, what we usually call the spirit or soul, is not limited by them. It is this information cloud that is the real us. The bodies are only the vehicles which we need to be able to function in the physical universe, for space/time. The body is just hosting the information cloud. However, contrary to some New Age ideas, the body is absolutely necessary for us to be able to have the appropriate experiences, and not something we should try to abandon in the process. It's here, in the physical, that the game is mainly being played out. Even when we get more evolved, we will need our bodies to travel in space and time. Since ancient times, the information cloud has been called by many names, such as light body and Merkaba, acting as a divine light vehicle, supposedly used by ascended masters to communicate with those who can tune into these higher realms. In fact, according to the Life Physics Group, the Merkaba refers to the spirit body surrounded by counter-rotating fields of light, which transfers the spirit body, the bio-mind, from one dimension to another one. In Figure 1 we can see how the rotating field unit can be described as an electromagnetic double cardinal spin 2, or rotating magnetic field. It's inside the subquantum vacuum plenum where we see the information cloud begin to take shape. The vacuum plenum is the Merkaba and manifests throughout the living matrix of the bio-mind. Through the information cloud, thought literally becomes reality, according to LPGC and their working model. LPGC teaches us further, the human bio-mind, as thought, matter in a bioelectronic matrix, expresses a hologramic form as a fundamental body, the one you're perceiving yourself to be in now, but can also express a number of different resonant harmonic bodies, which can take the form of avatars. An avatar is just another body conformed out of the same energy of which our four space/time bodies are, only this new body is somewhere and someone else, wherever and whenever we wish to go, whether it is to the future, the past, some planet in a distant galaxy, or to source. When a neuroscience practices ENS, he extends a point of view away from the fundamental body, but still linked to it, as a resonant harmonic avatar, described above. He can then extend himself space-wise and time-wise, using his living matrix as the vehicle. This is nothing exclusive, except for us here on Earth. It's done all the time by beings from the stars, and pure energetic entities as well. My own thought on this, which will be brought up later, is that this will be a very common way for us humans in the near future to travel through space and time in the multiverse. It can be done with or without technology, and when technology is used, it's sparse, and no rocket ships or other spacecraft is needed. 2. Different life forms in space/time. The life forms in the UNIM have been catalogued by the LPGC under two categories. They have found that life out there is either ontobiological or ontocyberenergetic. These two terms can be broken down into their prefixes and we can begin to see why there are two main types of life forms in the space/time. Onto refers to the element of existence and life form. Bio refers to the biology of the life form in question. So therefore, ontobiological equals biological life forms. Energetic refers to the infrastructural medium which holds the soul, or as advanced physics calls it, the information cloud. Onto-bioenergetic, extraterrestrials with a physical, biological body, such as ourselves, humans. The term biokind is used to describe biological species anchored in the same kind of DNA set which is common to all life in our galaxy, but manifested differently depending on evolutionary circumstances and interfering hybridization by outside races. 3. Here are some examples as experienced by a neurosensor. The first class was made of groups of humanoids, figures 3 to 1 below, just like us. In fact, the only variance we detected was height and weight. Our best estimate is that these people, males and females, are anywhere between 5 and 7 feet, and some even taller. In terms of other physical characteristics, skin color ranged from very light to very tan, almost black but without negroid features. Others displayed negroid features, but were relatively light-skinned and hair straight and brown to dark brown. As nearly as could tell by mere nosive observation, not examining the inside of their bodies to discern physiology and genotype, all of these appeared to be carbon-based. The humanoids represented about 60% of our sample. The second group was sauroid, or what the popular literature refers to as lizard-like or reptilian, figures 3 to 2. These, too, offered wide variances in phenotype and genotype. There were humanoid-like with leathery hard skins who were extremely tall, 7 feet by our estimate, about the same height as us Earth humans, 5.6 to 6 feet, and a third subtype about 5 feet tall at most. All such forms were male-female typed. Then there were the moth-like, very large and very tall, with what can best be described as wings or wing-like protrusions between what we could discern as arms and the trunk of the body. By very large, we mean 7 feet and taller. No distinguishable male, female types were discerned. The third subcategory was the group referred to in the literature as the Greys, figures 3 to 3. Of these, there were at least a dozen variances, in height, body types, including eye size and construction, weight, skin color and means of reproduction. This class represented approximately 30% of our sample. The third group was a small conglomerate of biokinds that looked humanoid, but their genotype and biology showed them to be iron-based, per 2 humanoid-insectoid blends, figures 3 to 4, one subgroup of magnesium-based, circulatory system, makeup, a third subgroup of silicon-based, sensory and skeletal structure, gel, soluble, gelatinous, silicon states, but the beige color skin looked rough, even harsh, like the unpolished surface of cement blocks. On to SIBO-energetic, onto equals life form, SIBO equals artificial, energetic equals soul carrier. This life form has both artificial and natural systems, also known as a cybernetic organism, figure 4 to 1. They often have living tissue over metal or ceramic-like endoskeleton. Onto SIBO-energetic means they are intelligent, cybernetic organisms dressed by organic tissue. They are hominid, and with a larger head than the trunk-head human proportions, and their height is almost 7 feet. This group of beings has not been examined closely by the LPGC as of yet. What is known is that there are several groups in this class, some not from our galaxy. 2.1 Different life forms beyond 4 space/time. All other life forms in the superdomains higher than 4 space/time are referred to as massless ontoenergetic entities, MOD. Ontoenergetic, life forms, souls without a biological body, transducer 6, life forms, transversals or hyperversals, are numerous throughout the universe, some with planets that have larger populations than Earth, figure 4 to 2. Transversals and hyperversals 7, in this context means life forms which can transfer their consciousness through space and time with or without any technology, in pure energetic form or in a transparent light body. These life forms have the impressive ability to move through the quantum superdomain from one position to another on a planet's surface. They are capable of thought-based technologies far beyond that of any ontobioenergetic beings, such as humans. There are 2 different classes of ontoenergetic life forms. Ontoenergetic 1, OE1, capable of transporting themselves between lone''s with only their information cloud, soul. They can move both space-like and time-like through the different levels, between different points without using bodies. Ontoenergetic 2, OE2, can transport themselves between lones in pretty much the same way as the OE1, except that not only do they bring their information cloud, but they also bring an energetic body having the same properties as the first harmonic body of an extension neurosensor, as described in section 1 above. Early exploration of the UNIM by extension neurosensors revealed Earth-like landscapes even in the syntonic diffusive, logomorphic, and the unisonic superdomains. They also revealed humanoids with energetic bodies that were not only inhabiting these landscapes, but were seemingly creating them using the combined minds of the humanoids living there, massless onto-energetic entities. These beings are able to lighten code a reality matrix of their own choosing in a finite area of a Limpash. A neurosensor entering into one of these domains may find himself in a very real manifestation of an Earth-like environment, including trees, mountains, oceans and so on, all which are products of the collective onto-energetic imagination. 3. Indexing of planetary bodies and the reality of the ascension concept. According to the working model, once we are incarnated on a certain planet, we are working within a certain frequency range, which is specific for that planet. The same goes for other celestial bodies in the universe, and it even pertains to life in higher limbs. It is our local space, time, and is what we have as long as we are living as biokinds, biominds on a particular planet, that is Earth, due to how we are constructed and the way we grasp and process information about what is internal and external to our body/mind. 8. Dr. Borton at LPGC is further telling me that what was to become the working model taught him and his group that all life forms are body, minds, including the so-called lower life forms, such as animals and plants. Mind, in this context, is a range of instantaneous connectivity with the self, one's own information cloud, the interconnectivity with the collective information clouds on the planet, and the superconnectivity with everything in the UNIM. In the higher aspect of things, spiritual, physical, living and life form are quite vague concepts, because they are all manifestations of the same thing and are all interconnected and equal in importance. Hence, when someone says, "I'm being spiritual," it only means that this person is focusing on that one aspect of life and is probably excluding the importance of the others, thus limiting her life view. Evolving as a person and as a species does not mean that we should only be spiritual, but instead think in more holistic terms and therefore include all aspects of life, the spiritual part being only one. The working model is teaching us that this means, in reality, that once we're born onto a certain planet, let's say Earth, we are indexed to the hologramic frequency of that planet. Consequently, as soon as we start using our bodies after have attached our information cloud, soul, to it, we are beginning to view reality from the perspective of the collective consciousness of that planet. Earth, for example, is already indexed to a certain frequency range, so those incarnated here can have experiences within that particular range. This is also why we are viewing things similarly, both when it comes to concepts and material things in our environment. Being indexed only once to a certain planet, for example Earth, means in reality that we don't come back to the same planet again. Is this indicating that we are only incarnated here once, have never been here before, and will never be here again in the future? Is the life we are living now, in 2011, our only life on Earth? This is what Dr. Borton told me in correspondence between the two of us. The emphasis is mine. We don't die. Never have, never will. No such thing as death in this or any other Limpash. There is only information as energy. We refer to our soul and spirit as an information cloud, which is what it literally is. Albeit, one that is superposed upon a body. We do bring all memories from other incarnations with us, but the catch is that we don't incarnate on the same planet sequentially, we incarnate on different planets in sequence. It is physically impossible to return to the same planet, as one is already indexed to the overfunction of that planet, and returning would be moving backward where life moves forward. Forward here means moving through the UNIM as experiencer of life that contributes to understanding of creation by all information clouds indexed to all overfunctions in all planets and space-time/limbs, such as de Sitter spaces which contain life forms who think up, create, their own heaven or place of rest or place of in-between. Source: Penre, Board and Correspondence, Jan 26, 2011. Your information cloud lives multiple lives in multiple ratios of space, time, because as a living information cloud, we are theoretically a macro quantum Hall fractional entity. meaning we can divide ourselves into many resonant forms of the original and go live somewhere, while say 3-5 stays put in, say, any one of large numbers of desider spaces we are capable of using to think up resting places for ourselves and ours. This does not mean your information cloud only lives one biological life at a time. If it did, it would be such a waste of life capacity. Each information cloud is capable of setting up harmonic resonant aspects of itself. This means an aspect piece of the source cloud is harmonic to it while existing in another life form, say, as a verdant or as a Pleiadian, or any other biokind. Oh, and there is a developmental curve to the existence of information clouds. Once the T-boundary is able to create them in a unique downward creation causal chain. Examine what this means, and it will blow you away. We go through all of these versions of the source we are in order to do what? To learn for ourselves? No. We go through these experiences as primary and as harmonics to contribute to the overall life management of creation. You see, we are on the fourth cycle, phase transition of universe version. 3 others prior having been failures for us as life, as we managed to misuse dark energy such that there were dead galaxies where dark energy was depleted by the life forms which lived in them. The universe as we know it is teeming with life, my brother. Teeming. Think of a phase transition as the equivalent of a Big Bang, but not one ending in a singularity or starting in one reincarnation? Well, again, we would represent a waste of life if we did not phase transitioned ourselves from one life form into a rest place into another life form. For many such transitions. Source: Penre, Board and Correspondence, Jan 26, 2011. These are all very interesting concepts, but ponder what it is he is actually saying here. He is telling me that we all live again and again, but are only indexed once to each planet, and then we move on to live somewhere else. He is also saying that we live multiple lives, simultaneously. My own research, as it has progressed, has taught me different. It is my conviction that we do, as Dr. Borden says, live lots of simultaneous lives, here and everywhere. However, we do live more than one lifetime on one planet, such as Earth. My conviction, and I will show this in detail later as there is much evidence for this, is that we send soul fragments of ourselves, our oversoul, down to Earth and somewhere else, simultaneously, to live several lives on the same planet, and those lives are only separated by time and line of focus. I am going over this in very simple terms now, because I will make an effort later to be more detailed, but this means we live more than one lifetime on each planet. Although once we incarnate here on Earth, we are subjected to the belief systems of this planet, and linear time is one of them. Therefore, it seems like we're reincarnated from the past, to the present, and into the future. Let's see what else Dr. Borden has to say on this subject. It becomes really interesting when he is revealing his sources. Let's use modeling offered by the working model as well as nocive evidence of teachings and work at the city of the sun god, in the pre-dynastic Egypt, by the Lord Ninishzida, Annunaki god, also known as Tot, West comment, prior to his exile to the Abzu by his brother Marduk. This would put this source at about 35,000 to 40,000 years ago. 8a. The next level of information up this ladder is what Ninishzida taught his pupils was the Ka or essence, not just physical, but also informational, more or less corresponding to the bio-mind, which, more than less corresponds to the corpo-conscious entity of body information, bioinformational/auric/Meissner field. The next level would correspond to the true Ka or essence, or what we here at the shop choose to call the information cloud or soul, spirit of an entity. Now, what happens here is that every object in the world, including biological entities, have a light cone which attaches them to the far future and far past, such that the object and its information cloud, which is actually, really, subquintal but also indexed much higher, and which places a most deterministic spin on what and how an object or living thing is to be. This subquintal determinism is what makes literally impossible for an information cloud that decouples from a body and enters any one of myriad de Sitter spaces as a kind of interregnum to return to the previous coupling conformation, not because it is physically impossible, but because it is informationally impossible. The subquantal information arrow of a living object co-joining templates, the one that, in the world, already exists of the person that is Joe or Mary or Max in a current life phase in the subquantum is subquantal information cloud, points only to a conjoining to a physical mass that it superposes as glove to hand for the time period of that life phase. Now, imagine the trouble Ninishzada had in explaining this intricacy to his students. Thus, the person who is Max or Joe or Marion, let me use contemporary English terms, the current incarnation is indexed to its information cloud here which is indexed to its subquantal information cloud. So, the learning done by Max and Mary and Joe enriches their information cloud, which literally means feeding information to the thought-resonant harmonic of the T-boundary directly and constantly, is done vertically, meaning phase sequentially, not phase horizontally, in other words, staying on one universe location, for example, planet Earth, and returning to the same location in every life phase and sequence. This would constitute a loop which the working model indicates would be physically impossible because it is informationally impossible. In other words, it is how the T-boundary builds the universe. Again, emphasis not in original, source, Penre, Borden Correspondence, February 14, 2011. So what Dr. Borden is saying here is that due to that it is informationally impossible to live on Earth more than once, there is no such thing as past and future lives on this particular planet. Instead the soul, information cloud brings with it the experience from that lifetime, collected in what he pictures as vertical time, and thus contributes to the overall experience of the Earth consciousness. Although I've come to realize that this may very well be correct to a certain degree, it's not the whole story. I have tried to discuss this further with Borden, but he's not been very responsive on this particular subject. First of all, the evidence that we live more than one lifetime on each planet is overwhelming, which I will show the reader as we continue, and even if Tote was correct about vertical time, or oversoul, or as Borden calls it, subquantal information cloud, splits itself in several factions which are all spread out on Earth, and elsewhere, from vertical time into linear. Think of it as an almost endless wooden plank, linear time, with a past, present and future. Then you drop hundreds of knives from above, simultaneously, so they stick and stand up from the plank in different places. The knives are different versions of you, hooking yourselves from vertical time into linear. Thus, you live many lifetimes on the same planet. Your line of focus as you read this paper is in the 21st century lifetime, one of the knives, but you have a lot more lives, separated by time and space. In the first level of learning, which includes this paper, we will talk a lot about the Annunaki and those who live on the planet Nibiru, so I will only briefly mention them now. Ninishzad is the Enkizat sun that is, as mentioned above, equivalent to Tot in Egypt. It is from this being Dr. Borden and LPGC has learnt the above. Then, of course, they have put that information in context with what else they have learned about what they call the the known universe. Ninishzada is one of the Annunaki, although born here on Earth eons ago. I have studied this species a lot and researched them quite deeply in order to write these papers, and my metaphysical sources and others, Google Tote on the internet, clearly show that Tote started out, just like his father, with teaching mankind certain aspects of life in the multiverse, based on the CDT plates, made by the Guardian Alliance, a friendly ET confederation, after have joined forces with the Guardians. But somewhere down the line he started to distort the sacred teachings of the Law of One, and was no longer reliable. When I listened to Dr. Borden's teachings above, I can see the distortion, mixed with truth with information left out. I will expand on all this that I am saying as we move on through the papers. In this case, I would not consider Ninishzada being a reliable source. Dr. Borden continues. The second source is nocive evidence my small LNS team and I have gathered concerning the work of a character we knew him called Lord Ninishzada, an earthborensa.a.me web link over the last 10 years from the Cumulus line of research heuristics initiated on January 12, 2001. This line begins in Central Egypt at approximately 37,500 years from today, using the 1945 timeline as common time start forward. The evidence suggests that Ninishzida was a master instructor at a complex in Central Egypt and also a master instructor at a delta location following the completion of some irrigation projects done at that site. This is a time period that sequentially to 1945 would place it at roughly 37,500 years from today. The twin mounds, pyramids, were not in existence at the time, and the core of C.A.Me.S in the midst numbered in the 50s, with a concentration at about the site where Luxor is now. The event stream we followed to support the above contention comes from a time approximating the time of the appearance of the home planet by a reading of the signs. In the event sequence in question, the C.A.Me in question was mastering initiates who were to minister the needs to the first and second divine pharaohs, namely Father Ptah and Father Ra, to local priests, Ptah being Ea/the Enki and Ra being Marduk. Editor's note. The specific instantiation of an information stream concerning instruction on and about the life phase sequencing of a human being on Earth then begins with instructions on the management of the ka of a human being by energetic means. This involved instruction on and about the crest or consortium of kas to which all living human kas belong. It also involved the use of management tools taught by the master on how to assist in the processing of a passing ka from Earth phase to a new phase. We took that to mean the passage from Earth to interregnum back to a new location. He taught his pupils that the direction of the evolvement of the cloud, he used that term to refer to the ka, was two ways, to the enrichment of the ka and to the enrichment of the crest. That all men groups, we translated that as nations, civilizations, were bound to the process of enrichment, and they all who go through a phase return to the lessons left unfinished or undone in the previous phase to be taken up again in the new phase, and that this was akin to returning to one's homeland to make right all things done wrong by the law of the crest. If you read this carefully, it does not indicate that return is to a previous stations, but that the idea was inculcated through the use of a metaphor that indicated, at least to us, and in particular to me then, that the return to a post-rest station, or what we now refer to as interregnum, was not necessarily back to the homeland but to something else, some other place, other than the Earth. Source: Penre, Board and Correspondence, February 14, 2011. Interestingly enough, I do not read into Ninishzida's teaching the same things Dr. Borden does, if we stay in the framework of what was just discussed. As of course the information cloud, the soul, and the crest is the planetary mass consciousness. As I see it, the Annunaki is here actually saying that we are having to face our karma, and we come back to do that. Nowhere does he say that you necessarily go to another planet. My research and multidimensional experiences as of late have proven to me that we are living many, many simultaneous lifetimes here on Earth, and that we now, in the so-called end times, are healing ourselves along the lines of time by confronting unhandled business from other simultaneous lives, whether they were in the perceived past or in the future. This is not some theory for me, I am living it, and therefore have first-hand experience that the LPGC theory of planetary indexing is not entirely correct. The following is what I consider being true, based both on research and experience. We simultaneously have one body here in the 21st century, while we may have other bodies in the 1500s, 700s, 800 BC, 50,000 BC etc. We even have bodies in the future. We usually don't notice this, because our different simultaneous lives are separated by time, as we perceive it, in a linear fashion. This is why we are normally not aware of our parallel incarnations. The diagram above explains how we are living several lives simultaneously. As you can see, I agree with LPGC's concept of vertical time, but not on the details. According to LPGC, time is energy, and each planetary body has a time-energy field surrounding it, determining the speed of time on a particular planet. I don't know if this is true or not, I simply thought that time was an agreed-upon concept by beings living on it. Earth is revolving around the Sun as it is rotating around herself as well. If no one on the planet is paying attention to time, All that would happen would be that these beings experience day and night and all in between, plus different seasons, changing on a regular basis. Then, if intelligent beings on the planet were to determine to measure time, they could do so by locating themselves in cosmos by watching the stars and their constellations, and then recognize what the sun cycle is and what season it is. Eventually, a more linear concept could emerge and we would have time measured similar to what we have today. So, I am not sure where this time energy field comes into the picture, but then again, I'm not a scientist. It is my conviction as well, that at this point in time, as we shall talk about later, a lot of souls have incarnated here to experience the strong energies around the so-called end times, in efforts to help raising the frequency of planet Earth in order to raise ourselves about the frequency fence we are currently stuck in. 9. This may very well be another interpretation of what LPGC is talking about regarding that being indexed to a certain planet means we stay in its frequency field. If what the working model is telling us about indexing in frequency range, the current New Age and spiritual movements, when they talk of ascending to higher dimensions, densities, are not correct. It would be impossible, both physically and spiritually, to move to the fourth or fifth dimensions. If each planet is limited to a certain frequency range by default, and we can only reach a certain level or frequency while indexed to that reality, or planet, ascension would in other words not work. You can't ascend higher than the highest level of the planetary frequency band. So, if we take to heart what LPGC says, people who think they will ascend to the fourth or fifth density dimension would be wasting their time. It's not going to happen, and there will not be any harvest of souls to the fourth density either. 10. Ascension, if we still want to use this term in the same sentence as the working model, would rather be to grab information available to us anytime from the Akashic record, process it and learn from it, and bring it with us through our information cloud as experience into another reality and frequency band when we incarnate into another planet after body death on Earth. So, when we feel like we are lifted up spiritually and become more awake and aware of how things are really working and of what is actually happening around us, it is not an ascension process in the New Age way of looking at it, but instead a jump up the ladder to a new level of experience within the frequency range available to us, depending on what planet we live on. Then, after have learned what we have learned from the experiences we've had during a lifetime, we take this information with us and move on to another planet which is of a higher frequency band, or similar to Earth, depending on how much we learned during a lifetime, and continue our experiences there. Again, this is ascension in line with how the working model looks at it. But although I feel that much of what I've learned about the working model is correct, I have found evidence that the above is not correct. I agree that Earth is operating within a certain frequency band/range. However, I do not think this frequency band is natural, but is more of a frequency fence, set up by one or more ET races to be able to mentally and physically control us. It's a control system which is built in many layers, and that is quite complicated. I will discuss this later on and show the reader what I base my ideas on, but I find the evidence pretty solid. I will expand on it even more in the paper's second level of learning. Maybe LPGC missed this, or misinterpreted it in their exploration of the unum, or there are other factors involved. We can certainly leave the planet on our avatar, or harmonic body, light body, and explore the unum without our 3D body, but is what we see really what we think it is? Or is there a way to control what is being experienced by the ENS-1 out of the body and moving into time, space, the astral? Also, are the frequency bands around other planets really solid, so that the beings who live there can exceed a certain frequency? Or is what the ENS- experiences, the current frequency band of a certain planet, but something that can be exceeded as the mass consciousness of the beings on the planet is raised due to that reality is fluid and not solid? In the working model, what determines which frequency band a certain planet should be in? I know the original creator gods who first created us humans did not intend to keep us within a certain frequency band, fence? Things we will further discuss as we move on. 3.1 What is past life memories? There are basically two kinds of past life memories, the genetic and the spiritual. If we start with the genetic memories, simply put, we inherit these memories from our ancestors on a cellular level. Thus, we can remember things our father, our paternal grandfather, and his ancestors along the lines of time experienced. It's all transferred down to the children through bloodlines, apart from spiritual memories. Then we have the same memories on our mother's side. Upon that, of course, we have 2 grandparents on each side of the family, and so the tree branches out even more. Then in the next generation there will be twice as many, and soon our ancestors will be so numerous that on one basic level, we're all connected. So can we carry memories with us from 200 years ago? 5,000 years ago? 500,000 years ago? Absolutely. We not only can, but we do. The only thing which separates us from each other is time and focus, as we look at it here on Earth. If all time was perceived as happening simultaneously, which it is on a subquantum level, we would be able to experience all different times and timelines at the same moment. However, this is not supposed to be the case, because that would limit our purpose to explore the lifetime we're currently in on a certain planet. Our genetic memories don't distinguish how much time has passed, in our terms of looking at time. When we remember the past lifetimes of our ancestors, it doesn't matter if an incident occurred 50 years ago or 100,000 years ago, the memories can be equally clear or nebulous. We also have the capability to recall several lifetimes at once, because everything our ancestors did and thought is stored in the memory bank on a cellular level, in our DNA. 11. Although I differ with the working model when it comes to that we are only indexed once to each planet, I will let the working model talk for itself, and we will discuss what I may suspect is discrepancies and false teachings later on. It is very important for the reader to grasp the concept of the working model, at least the simplified version I'm presenting, because it has everything to do with the alien present on Earth today. That memory is stored in the genetic memory bank is nothing new. It's been taught in many schools of learning over time. What may be considered new by many is that we, as spiritual beings, did not experience these lifetimes firsthand, only our ancestors did. If the information cloud does not reincarnate on the same planet twice, connects with the biokind, for example here on Earth, and becomes a spirit/mind/body complex, it immediately plugs into the indexed common experiences of that bloodline, and ultimately to all other bloodlines that have ever lived on that planet. It's like plugging into a computer system. Once you're plugged in, you have access to the whole network. Those who watch the Matrix movies know what I'm talking about. Then, on the other hand, we have the soul memory. Some psychiatrists and researchers have started encountering some interesting things in their patients and volunteers for their research. Many people recall lifetimes as beings not from this earth. They describe different worlds where they looked physically different from what we do here on this planet, and they remember alien cultures and customs. This is the soul memory of genetic memories on other planets. Just as the physical body, on a cellular level, remembers everything that's happened in the past on that planet, the soul remembers everything that's happened in all lifetimes on all different planets it has experienced, ever. So we bring everything with us, on all levels 12. We also have oversouls, which are relay station on higher frequencies, and these oversouls remember everything that's happened to a single soul, whole soul group, or everything that's happened in the multiverse. The oversoul can also, perhaps on its highest level, possibly be equivalent to the thought superdomain, see paper number 1, 4.2, where we store the ultimate Akashic records. Another note on reincarnation. Dr. Borton tells me that the Unum does not waste time if it can help it. So he says to me that we incarnate on different planets simultaneously, because it would be such a waste of time and resources if we only incarnated one biokind at the time. If this is true, one may also ask why we only incarnate once on each planet. If I were in charge of planning the Unum and the multiverse as a whole, I would let each soul incarnate several times on the same planet, perhaps both in the same, or in different, time periods, even, or I would realize that a being would not have as much of an experience in that reality. It would be like if you are born on the Canary Islands and never leave these small islands in your whole life. you wouldn't be able to experience anything else on Earth except the Canary Islands. Everything else would be hearsay or experienced secondhand. Yes, it is true that by being plugged into the Earth matrix, you have access to the genetic Akashic records of the whole race, but only on the sub and unconscious level. This Canary Islands analogy is at least making me wonder why Dr. Borton believes we are only indexed once, especially when there is so much evidence out there, which I will dig into later, suggesting the opposite. Instead, I'd like to expand the concept. We are incarnating several times on the same planet and simultaneously live several lives on several other planets. Can this really be done? Of course. As soon as we jump out of the box and start seeing the bigger picture, there is nothing strange or impossible about it. But let's continue. There is also an in-between lives area where the soul, information cloud goes after have exited a body on any given planet, the sitter space. In this rest area we have the chance to ponder what we did and didn't do in our last life, put it in perspective to our overall experiences in general thus far, heal any wounds, set new goals, and go on a new adventure in another time and space. We will discuss the in-between lives area in more detail in the metaphysical section. 4. Observership and common reality. Observership is a very important part of the game in the UNIM. This term is not limited to higher form of beings, or just bioenergetic entities. It is applicable to all form of life, even animal and plant life. However, for the purpose of this papers, we are concentrating on the higher level functionality of observership with regards to higher mammals, including us Homo sapiens sapiens, the thinking human. It's the process of observership which allows for us to carry out the fundamental purpose of the T-boundary, to know itself in an extension of itself in form of information clouds. First, the observer is realized by anything in nature, as everything that exists from here to the source. The difference in the observer can make a tremendous difference in how we see things. These two different views of the same kind of object is for real, the object is just viewed from two different limbs. The differences being the observer and the observer's index, meaning the index of a certain planet, for example Earth, which come together to form a hologramic picture of reality, something we shall address soon. Secondly, the act of observing may affect the process being observed, resulting in a different outcome than if the object was unobserved. Since observership occurs in everything, both the observer and the observed will process the information even if they are consciously unaware of it. The observer and the observed are experiencing the process depending on their index, that is which planet they are on, from a door which limb hash. If someone from another planet or limb came to Earth and observed the bowl of fruit, they would be able to decode what they observed so that it will be perceived in the same way as it is perceived by those indexed to the Earth frequency. Thirdly, and the most important aspect of observership is the very act of observation. Observation is a function of consciousness, and consciousness is the interconnection of all energy, as quanta and elementary particles, in a never-ending continuum. The effects of this can be seen both on the quantum, subquantum level as well as in force-space/time. As we evolve, we will feel more connected with the T-boundary. Once this connection occurs, we begin to see the role which consciousness plays. It's the interconnection of energy which penetrates all life throughout the UNIM, multiverse. In life physics there's a concept called MPO or manifest production observership, which is a technical word for common reality. It is the reality which is literally created, or fabricated, by all observers in the given space, time ration where it is manifest. The MPO is the ultimate hologram in which the observer exists. 5. Space. Time versus time, space. Let us first define time. The working model explains that time is energy as well, dark energy, which surrounds everything in the universe, including galaxies, stars and planets, and all intergalactic space in our universe. It is also perceived differently depending on where and when you are. Just like each planet has an index as we discussed above, it is also surrounded by its own dark energy, which is its time, or planetary clock if you will. We can think of the subquantal energetic medium of dark energies as the medium through which Earth moves, like through water, It's quite equally stable and equally dense. However, as our planet moves through seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, and months on its orbit around the Sun, there are going to be small time varieties, not really noticeable for us living here. Still, there are going to be minor spurts of time and other moments when time slows down. This is more noticeable on a planet with a much longer orbit, and in these cases, beings living on such planet would experience more detectable time spurts. Also, how beings perceive time is to a certain degree dependent on how far from the Sun the planet is on which they live. Obviously, a year is going to be perceived as longer on a planet like Jupiter, which is farther away from the Sun than Earth. The latter is completing a year, one orbit around the Sun, faster than Jupiter. However, interestingly enough, longevity of a certain species is apparently also depending on the length of the orbit around the Sun. If we, out of simplicity, say that a human lifespan is 100 years, and we have beings on a planet where it takes 4,000 years to orbit its Sun, each member of this species lives approximately 4,000 times longer. Its lifespan would therefore be 400,000 years. This is approximate, of course, and varies slightly due to genetics, DNA and other factors, but in general this seems to be the case. 13. An interesting example of this are those beings, described in the work of late Zecharia Sitchin, 1920–2010, called the Annunaki. 14. It takes their planet around 3,600 years to orbit the Sun, but they also live approximately 3,600 times longer than humans by default, 3,600 years for us being 1 year for them. 13a. We are going to talk a lot about this alien race later on. Moreover, time is not linear the way humans look at time. Linear time, with a past, present and a future, is something we have developed here to be able to have these certain experiences which are unique to this planet. We have forgotten that we are multidimensional by default and live multiple lives simultaneously. On a subquantum level, however, all time is simultaneous and in time is also cyclic in nature, with cycles within cycles or wheels within wheels, as perceived in the mystery schools. There are small cycles of time and bigger cycles. A planet has its own cycle, divided into lesser ones as well. Some say a greater Earth cycle is about 26,000 years 15, others say 75,000 years 16, while I have also heard 500,000 years. It's all arbitrary, depending on our focus point. Whatever our focus point is, many now agree that we are closing in on the end times as described both in the Bible, the Mayan calendar and elsewhere. There is a general concept that the year 2012 is the end of this current, greater cycle, and the world will end the way we know it. Although there are those who proclaim there is going to be a literal end of the world, I think the majority of people who have looked into this are in agreement that it is a shift of consciousness, which will take on new forms and in some terms will be perceived as a new era. On winter solstice 2012, our solar system is also in perfect alignment with the galactic center and has completed a full cycle around the Milky Way galaxy, which only happens every 26,000 years. According to many metaphysical sources, this means a big leap in consciousness, because there is a lot of energy involved in this process, and energy is also information, particularly so when transferred on gamma rays. At the same time, the energy of our own sun is changing, creating a boost in consciousness, something I believe many of us have experienced. In fact, according to the Pleiadians, the rise in consciousness has been an ongoing process since 1987. The time period between 1987 to 2012 is what they call the nanosecond, which is the time frame where the most intense boost will occur, and we will also over these 25 years experience that time is speeding up and time as we know it is collapsing. As a consequence, certain timelines are merging and we become more aware of our multidimensionality. I can personally attest to that this has indeed been the case for me. My true awakening happened just before the nanosecond started, in 1985–86, and I know there are a lot more people who experience a time spurt as well. I'm just one in a crowd. In larger terms, even universes have their cycles. I can't say at this point how long it takes for a universe to complete a cycle, It quite possibly depends on how fast the universal consciousness evolves, but apparently and according to the experience of LPGC, universes do complete their cycles, implode, and start all over. It makes sense, of course, that our universe, which is spherical, is orbiting something larger. This is evident, because everything in the known universe is orbiting something larger. It wouldn't stop with this single universe. Here is another good reference on time, which makes the concept quite comprehensible. It comes from the modern Bavarian Illuminati 17, presently located mainly in the United Kingdom. Their order has a lot of old, Gnostic information available to them, information that's been kept hidden until recently, when they have released this information in increments to have mankind ponder new science and new concepts about the universe, time, the spirit, God, and other important issues. Why are they releasing this information now? The order has been opponents to the powers that be on this earth, they say, since the days of Solomon, perhaps even longer, but have had to go underground for their own safety and for their information to stay safe within the order. They were the ones behind the Russian, French, and American revolutions. They have fought behind the scenes against the royal families and the international bankers, but now, as we are approaching big changes, the order believe that it's time to let people know how humanity has been deceived over the millennia. I have been in contact with this order as well as LPGC during my research for these papers. I was in contact with the Illuminati previous to LPGC, and I reminded the Bavarian Illuminati of their bloody past. Their answer was that the order is not engaged in war and violent resistance anymore and have realized the limitations of using these methods. This time around they want to use information, dissemination, education, and a peaceful resistance movement, which they have already started. They call it the Movement 18. Personally, I haven't seen any movements with a positive outcome. This is not because the members are not good-hearted and serious, but because movements, if they are a threat to the power establishment, are either taken out, being infiltrated or discredited to such a degree that they lose most of their support ever existing present. Still, we need to keep in mind, and this is important, that groups that seem to be opposed to each other, like the Bavarian Illuminati and the powers that be, who are running the show behind the scenes in a fashion that is not benefiting mankind, may either be two sides of the same coin, meaning they were playing out their agendas against each other, when on a higher level they are controlled by the same forces, run by the same ETs, pretending to oppose each other to create conflict and war and ultimately keep humanity on a lower frequency. Then, of course, by having people signing up for movements also means the resistance can be catalogued by the powers that be. Normally, the members of such groups, even on relatively high levels, are unaware of who is really pulling the strings. This doesn't mean we shouldn't look into what they have to say. Sometimes, like in the case of the Bavarian Illuminati, we will be able to get some really good information that way. Mind you, I am not saying it's one way or the other when it comes to this particular group. I just want to make the reader aware of how things work behind the scenes. The Bavarian Illuminati, which should not be confused with the Illuminati described on conspiracy sites as being the bad guys ruling the world, was narrowed down God and existence into one simple formula. R greater than equals 0. R stands for reality, which is the energetic universe, including living things in it, while 0 is God. The theory behind this is that reality is greater than God, because reality is ever expanding, but at the same time reality is God. So when reality expands, so does God. Therefore, reality and God are also equal? Here they take this concept and explain it in terms of an analogy. For more information, I advise the reader to visit their website, armageddonconspiracy.co.uk. What does the universe look like from outside space and time? If everything is interconnected because there is no physical distance between any two things, how does that work? If no time ever passes, how can anything ever change? Isn't everything just eternally frozen? Isn't the universe outside space and time incomprehensible? Certainly, we cannot hope to describe it in the familiar terms of space and time since these do not apply. Still, it is useful to have some kind of image in our minds, The r equals 0 cosmos is hardwired to the r greater than 0 cosmos. The r equals 0 domain is not in space and time, but is indissolubly linked to something that is the r greater than 0 domain. So, the r equals 0 does experience space and time, albeit at second hand. In particular, it experiences it informationally, mentally. Consider a time-lapse film. You film traffic going over a bridge for a 24-hour period. You then speed up the film and compress the 24 hours into, say, 24 minutes. The speeded up film looks both familiar and very different. The compressed film is operating according to different rules of space and time compared with the original film. Now speed up the film to infinity. What happens? If something is traveling infinitely fast, it does not experience the passage of time. It gets anywhere in no time. Everything is instantaneous. The time-lapse film ends as soon as it begins. All of the information it contained is processed instantly. How the brain interacts with the soul. Imagine that you are the owner of a radio-controlled helicopter. There's a little silver pilot sitting in the cockpit. You start remotely flying the helicopter and you have never had so much fun? But then you think, this could be better. Specifically, it could be better if your consciousness was somehow transferred into the little pilot guy. For you, if the helicopter crashes, it's too bad. You'll need to get a new one. If your little pilot crashes, he's dead. The stakes are so much higher for him, hence the excitement is so much greater. Your hobby is transformed into a life and death struggle if you can switch your consciousness into the pilot. So, imagine that your soul in the r equals 0 domain is controlling a physical body, a human being, in the r greater than 0 domain. Well, it's quite a lot of fun having this remote controlled android doing things at your behest. But the creature is disposable. You're not feeling what it's going through. Everything is taking place at a distance. You are experiencing second-level, second-hand emotions. Your mind needs to be inside that human being if your life is to become meaningful. What is a human brain? What's the point of it? If minds exist independently of matter, who needs a physical brain? The answer could not be simpler. The brain, with its countless brain cells and connections, is the means by which consciousness in the r equals 0 domain gets transferred into the r greater than 0 domain. That's the amount of processing power a mind needs if it's to change its perceptions from that of something outside space and time to something inside space and time. It needs to be able to process, via the physical senses, all of the signals coming from its environment. It needs to understand spatial and temporal pleasure and pain. It needs to feel emotion. 19. How we perceive time is, as we can see, quite subjective. It's obvious that when we are at work, for one person the day seems to fly by while for another it seems endless, subjective time. Interesting also is that a few hundred years ago, people weren't as linear in their perception of time compared to now. Most of us wear watches, although I've stopped using mine. Clocks and watches are a common thing, on the computer in front of me, at work, on buildings while I'm driving, in stores, virtually everywhere. It's very important in our society to be on time, or we can even lose our jobs. While doing certain data entry on the computer in some jobs, it's imminent that we don't spend more than a few seconds on each entry, etc. In the industrial society, time is everything. It's all a race against time, because time is money. Money is energy, and whomever controls money also controls time. That's how it works. When I was listening to a Palladian CD the other day, an engineer in the audience said that we humans became more linear in our thinking after the railroads were built and the trains started rolling down the tracks. They had to be on schedule, so people knew how long they could expect to wait at the station before the train arrived. Before that, we were more multidimensional in our thinking, and more open for ideas that did not involve linear time. There is truth to this. Let's ponder the following scenario in relation to time. An alien race from another star system, let's say 50 light years from Earth, wants to visit us in the year 2011. They are quite an advanced race, so they have no problems finding Earth on the star map. They know our coordination and can easily, by using wormholes, Black, white holes, stargates and anti-gravity travel here more or less instantly. So, hypothetically, they take their hyperdimensional spaceship and arrive at Earth in what time? Their own planet has a totally different orbit than ours and they don't count time as we do. Imagine that their days are 20 of our days and their years are 100 of ours. How do they know in what time they arrive at Earth? They have no way of knowing that without using advanced mathematics. They need to know the coordinates. Channeled transversals and hyperversals sometimes have the same problem. They, too, can easily tune into the Earth consciousness, but in what time will they arrive? Due to our own catastrophic events, it's now easier for both benevolent and not so benevolent entities to enter our space-time, because we left big rips and holes in space, and open portals and wormholes where they could come in when we dropped the atom bombs over Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. By dropping these bombs, we were successfully advertising our existence to the multiverse. That's when we got some real attention from beings all over the star map. Lots of alien entities could now enter our reality in modern time, and this was perhaps not such a good idea for more than one reason. After that we continued dropping A-bombs in remote places, and guess what? More entities came through as more portals were opened up. 21. Both in metaphysics and in mainstream physics there is a distinction between space, time and time, space. The best way to look at it is that space, time and time, space are ratios of each other. Space, time is thus the reality we experience as bio-minds here in our 4D universe, while time, space is the reality we experience in the ether or the astral planes, for example between lives. There again, time is perceived differently, because it's related to the dark energy which determines time in the astral. Although ghosts, discarnate spirits, hovering in the frequency field close to ours, are rare, relatively speaking, they may stay around as lost souls for a long time. In our terms, the spirit itself may think it has only been around for minutes, or days. These spirits didn't make it to the rest area, sitter space, between lives due to attachments of some kind to their previous life. They just can't let go. It could be because of a traumatic, sudden death, which puts the spirit in confusion, sometimes not even realizing that they are dead. It could be the separation from a loved one, or even the loss of material things dear to them. One or more of these examples in combination without having a clear picture of where they want to go, or whom they want to meet with after body death, is what makes some spirits stay around, perceived by us biokinds as ghosts. However, sooner or later they usually realize where and who they are, and continue on. We all have guides helping us cross over, but if we're stuck in an incident or similar from our previous life, and are ignorant of the fact that we are in spiritual form after death, some people won't even notice that the guides are around, or may not want to go with them. It's always important not to get attached to things in a compulsive way and think that it's more important than our combined progress. It's natural to feel a loss after we lose our body, but we just need to let go and move on. That's life and how it works, and it's how we progress. 6. Wormholes, Einstein-Rosen bridges. Something that has also been proven in the working model is the strange phenomenon of wormholes. The neurosensors found out firsthand that in the force-space/time universe there are networks and webs of relatively stable Einstein-Rosen bridges, bridges, 22, figure 10, which interconnect all stars in all galaxies, and even galaxies to each other. bridges will be seen through telescopes that capture images in the visible light range. An example of this is the energetic pipeline connecting NGC 1409 and NGC 1410, figure 10. Each star system of planets within a galaxy appears to also be plugged into a near-universal web of such wormholes. The fifth rule applies to this phenomenon. The fifth rule states that space-like accessibility of one limb from another in space-time is possible by life-form translation from one limb to the other through the induction of a space-time origin singularity in the index, or origin, limb to a limb of choice by vector intention, or by life-form transduction, or tunneling, by use of the naturally occurring stable intra- and intergalactic spiderweb of Einstein-Rosen bridges, or wormholes, such that time values in any two lums are time relationships between space, time addresses in the index and target lums 23. This, of course, makes space traveling fairly easy once a species has learned how to use these wormholes to more or less instantly go from one place to another anywhere, and probably anywhere, in the four-space/time universe. Wormholes can also, without breaking physical laws, be used as time machines after a few initial problems have been solved. If an advanced civilization could take one natural wormhole melt as it begins to increase in mass and its twin, the end of the wormhole, will correspondingly be reduced in mass until it acquires a net negative mass. A relatively stable wormhole engineered to remain viable would then be possible. Mount wormholes could also be made into time machines through time dilation, thus creating a time difference between one mouth and the other. What if the instability could be evaded, say, for small aperture wormholes, for example, 340 feet in diameter, with mouths separated by extremely large distances, say, 40 million light-years. 24. These two science papers, explaining the absolute basics of the working model, I hope has given some new interesting perspective to the reader's view on the latest in science. If you are interested in learning more and have the ability to understand highly scientific language, I would highly recommend you expand my simplified version by visiting LPGC's website at lifephysicsgroup.org.